Welcome to Women Winning Divorce with your host, Heather Quick. Heather brings over 20 years of law experience that advocates and empowers women to achieve happier and healthier lives. Each week, we provide knowledge and guidance on different aspects of family law to help lead women through the difficult and emotional legal challenges that they are facing. Listen in as she discusses issues including divorce, custody, alimony, paternity, narcissism, mediation, and other family law issues to provide insight on the journey of women winning divorce. Welcome to the show. I'm Julie Morgan, and I'm joined by your host, Heather Quick. Hi, Heather. How you doing?
I'm great, Julie. How are you today?
I'm doing very well. And I looked at the topic and I said, ooh, part 1 was awesome. So part 2 is going to be really good.
Oh, yeah. It gets juicy now for sure.
Yes, definitely. And so I know the listeners are like, what are you talking about? We're talking about alimony part 2. First of all, let's revisit just so we can get a clear definition. What is alimony?
Alimony is spousal support. So during a divorce, after divorce, the overall goal of alimony is to really help the spouse that hasn't been earning or earning as much, basically not go in the poorhouse. So, and, we went through so many of the different scenarios. I could talk about alimony for probably weeks on end, just really narrow it down. And, some people would find it interesting, and then on some parts would be like, this is ridiculously boring. So you start with, hey, how much does the one spouse, have the ability to pay? And then let's look at the other spouse for need. So that is, and we talked about a lot of it last time, like length of marriage and things like that. So many factors go into it. And many people have the, belief, not totally a misconception, but, I have to have the same standard of living. And that's what alimony does. But that doesn't always work quite that way. But that is what most people will say. Well, this was my standard of living. And true, that plays a part. But really, we're looking at need and ability. And so, as we go through it, you'll hear me talk about that. But that's really what we're looking at.
You said that, and that's exactly what I think of when I think of alimony is a standard of living. It needs to be exactly the same.
Yes, and that's generally impossible. Look, if we're being frank about this, if it's just one income that supported one household and now it's going to be 2, neither party is going to have the same standard of living. However, your standard of living is absolutely relevant to your needs. So it's, it does play a part. It is in the statute. So it plays a part. And there may be cases when there is an excess of money, then that is easier to do. But generally speaking, there's going to be financial hardship on both sides in order to make alimony happen. However, it serves a great purpose because it does have to fill in that gap. And when we talk about need and, if one spouse has not worked or, doesn't have the ability to work, that's where we really look into that need.
Yes. And if you'd like to listen to Alimony Part 1, you can go to our website, womenwinningdivorce.com. So one of the things that was brought up in Part 1 was a financial affidavit. Okay. So does everyone have to fill out one of these when getting a divorce?
Yes, it is required by the statute. And it is one of the most painful things for most people to complete. They procrastinate it and it can be overwhelming. But truly, it's a budget, which I know if I say some people hear that go, I don't want to do a budget. But really, if we condense it down, that is what it is. And it can be hard if sometimes you just don't know. So we work very diligently. Our paralegals are extremely well trained and well educated, and they work with our clients to create that financial affidavit. Sometimes we need to go to bank statements. We need to really look at, what is being spent, because they have no idea. Most I see is on extreme. Most people either they go crazy, I spend this much at the grocery store, or they really lowball it. So that means they have absolutely no idea. And I talk about that because that's on there. Like, how much do you spend on food per month? Meals inside the home, meals outside the home. And, I know for some people, they're like, wow, I went through my bank statement and I didn't realize I ate out so much, or I spent so much money out, so it's an important exercise, but it's so very important when you are looking to receive alimony, or if you have exposure to pay alimony. I mean, it is, to me, the single most important thing that gets filed. And most individuals, they do a terrible job on it. And so then that, works well for us and our clients, because when they're being questioned, they have no idea what's on it or what it means.
Has someone ever come in and you say, okay, so this is one of the first steps that we need to do. We need to fill out this financial affidavit. We need to look at the budget. They look at it and they say, well, you know what? That's a lot. And I know I'm not going to be able to keep the standard of living that I've had. So you know what? Let's pause.
I am certain that has happened over the years because it's overwhelming and that's scary. And we've talked about that throughout this, throughout our show. The fear of the unknown is sometimes enough to really paralyze you from taking action, because you at least know the situation you're in. And now, you need money for, groceries, for gas, for the basics, and it can be overwhelming and scary. And what we certainly help our clients with, if they're overwhelmed and like, I can't move forward on this, if there's an opportunity for them to pause it, we can do that. Of course, that has to be both sides. Also, we work through, and that's when, when we talk about the different types of alimony, maybe it's like, well, you can go earn money. Let's really explore that. Let's explore what maybe we can do to help you supplement, because we recognize, we can all recognize, like, this is the finances, this is what it is, and where cutbacks, may have to be made.
I look at this, and this could also be something where someone says, you know what, I'm going to drag my feet with this so we can kind of extend this process because I don't want to go through it. So is there a deadline to fill this out?
Yes, in theory. The law says the statutes require the 45 days from when we file. Unfortunately, many times we have to go to court to compel the other side to fill it out because they have so many reasons. And sometimes that is very often the husband. And there's plenty of money, and he certainly has plenty of time. They just don't want to do it. And unfortunately, many attorneys are unable to get their clients to do it. But the good news is the law backs you up. And we have to take you to court to make you do what the rules say you're supposed to do in a timely fashion. The court is supposed to award attorney's fees for that particular action, not like the overall thing. That will be on our list one day as well to talk about fees. But yes, the rules are there to require people to follow the rules and play fair. But that's why the judges are there for when they don't.
Okay. Yeah, I figured that this would be something that people would try to draw out as much as they can. You know what I mean?
Indeed.
Yeah. So let's talk about how long this form is, because I'm thinking, depending on the amount of money that's brought into the household, sometimes it could be a short form and sometimes it could be a longer form, right? Because more money, possibly more expenses. So is there a difference there?
There is. Now, they say if you earn, the statute is the rules. If you earn less than $50,000, you fill out a short form. If it's more than that, it's a long form. But I will tell you that the long form is what we always use. We only use the long form because it has all the lines for all the things that you may not think about. And the worst thing to do would be to go into a divorce situation and you really haven't been educated and advised on what it costs you to live. Because whether the money is there or not, you need to be clear on what your situation's going to be. And the short form doesn't include things like dry cleaning or prescriptions or over-the-counter medication or hair and nails or something as simple as like magazine subscriptions or newspaper. And it might seem small, but those things, they add up, and you'll hear people say, yeah, I don't know where the money goes. Well, it goes somewhere. In this comprehensive, bigger form, it covers so much because it has a line for everything. And so it says that, and you're like, well, I don't know. But if you go to the bank statement, maybe you see that, what you spend on, what do you spend on your pets? I mean, we know, and there's, of course, a whole form area for the children, but a lot of people spend a lot of money on their pets. And if there's not an area for that where they're really thinking about it, they're going to miss that and not have an adequate and sufficient information upon which to move forward on their divorce.
To me, that just kind of reminds me of whenever you pay your taxes, always itemize. That's what people say. Hey, you know what? I am not an accountant, so that's not what I'm telling you to do. But that just kind of reminds me of that,
Exactly.
Secondly, so when we're thinking about this, that means I need a list of documents. I mean, I need everything that I can get my hands on. Tell me, what are some of those things? You've mentioned some of them, but like, how comprehensive is this list?
For the basic disclosure, meaning this is what is required. They call it mandatory. And that list is rather comprehensive because it is, keep this in mind, a general list. So it's going to have a lot of stuff in, including your tax returns, maybe your pay stubs, bank statements, credit cards, retirement accounts. And, the one thing, Julie, is it's a lot, but it's important. And the key for, any woman about to embark on this process is to know that it doesn't have to be overwhelming, and it does not need to be scary. You just got to get it done. And that is what your lawyer and their staff are for. That's what our staff does. That's what our paralegals do. And we help them. And we explain, okay, this is how we get this stuff. Let's go through here. And, and sometimes it's a situation where, my husband has everything. And of course, no paper statements to the house. That creates, again, that fear that, oh my gosh, how am I going to do this? I'll tell you, we do this all the time. And we help guide our clients. And we're like, well, you're on that bank account. Go to that bank and ask for 6 months of statements. And our staff can go through it with you, but we can highlight and we come up with at least a starting estimate. The financial affidavit is something that typically we amend as we get more information, as things change, because when we start the process, most people are living together. We're looking at this financial affidavit for, hey, what do you need during the divorce? That temporary alimony we talked about last time. But as we go through the process, we're looking at your future. You may not remain in that same house. You may not want to. It may not make sense financially. So now we got to look at, well, now what's it going to cost? And where are we going to look at your future? Because that is a very important part of this financial affidavit in the divorce process, from my perspective, is your future. So we know what it costs right now, but I really want to be thinking about where you are going to be a year, 3 years from now. And let's think that through so that we have these expenses and they're going to be close enough and adequate to, provide you the support you need.
For some women, is that the first time that they may even go to the bank and get the bank statement?
Yes. And there's no shame in that. It just is what it is. And I will tell you, Julie, again, because this is, it hadn't been that long, and we can both remember when all statements and everything came to the mailbox. You and I are young, of course. However, we know it wasn't that long. It's been a time, whereas it doesn't happen as often now. And so there's no shame in that. It's like, listen, that's why everybody needs a password list of every password their spouse has and they have for every account. Because if they get hit by a bus or whatever, how are you going to even have access? Like, it is difficult, and that is a barrier that is real. And like I said, there's no shame in that, which of course many women feel very embarrassed by, and it's nothing to be embarrassed by about at all.
And your staff walks them through that and helps them understand that this is not something to be embarrassed about, but we are going to start right here and work our way through it.
Exactly. Yeah. Right. I mean, because that's the only way through. You don't get over it. You just get through it. And you got to start somewhere. And it's just one at a time. And let's get through this and understand. Even though it seems scary or overwhelming, it's so empowering to now know. So what we see generally is a shift. And what I would want women to know is you're going to start feeling better because you're like, okay, now I know. And hey, don't you want to know, even if something terrible is about to happen financially? Some people might say, no, thank you. I'll keep the blinders on. But I think most people would like to know.
Knowledge is power. Yes. And yes, both Heather and I are young. You're listening to Women Winning Divorce with Heather Quick, owner and attorney for Florida Women's Law Group. Heather, when we left off, we said we were going to talk about the importance of the financial affidavit. We've defined the financial affidavit, basically a budget. But how will the courts use this financial affidavit? What do they use it for exactly?
It's filed with the court. It's evidence. And we use it mostly to determine your alimony needs. Now, because child support is a formula, but there are expenses for your children that are on the financial affidavit. So they're relevant, absolutely. Unfortunately, what you spend on your child doesn't equal what the formula for child support will be. But regardless, the court is going to rely on the financial affidavit to determine alimony, and, both on the payer. If the husband's going to pay, they're going to look at their income. And then when we look at, if it is the wife, how her need is. And the only way to establish the need is the expenses, the amount of money that you spend that you need to live.
Let's say, and you mentioned this in the first segment of this show, let's say the wife decides not to remain in the home where they've been living and she decides to move somewhere else. Obviously, it's important to know. Wouldn't it be important for her to do that sooner rather than later so you know that expense so you can put that in the financial affidavit?
That one really depends. And one of those things, there's the first issue. Let's just talk about, I don't want to live there with him while we're going through this divorce. And he says he's not leaving. Okay. And I do hear that a lot. And number one, if you're in danger, you feel threatened, yes. Then that is of course, your safety is the first. However, if you are going to go and, sign a lease or put yourself on the line for some expenses, we need to know what you're going to be able to get first. So don't go obligate yourself to new expenses if you don't have a court order saying what you're going to receive. And, many times they say, oh, he'll sign the lease or whatever. And, I don't want to abandon the home. And if there are children, I think you should not do anything without consulting your attorney, because again, we want to look at so many things, and, leaving the home with the children or without the children, and where are you going? There's so much to it beyond just the financials, but the financials, of course, are very important. So that one is, don't do it without talking to your attorney, preferably, so that we can really just assess, and we can, say, okay, the pros and cons of this are, and of course, many, in our case, many women are like, well, this is what I'm doing. Well, okay. These are, reasons to do it, reasons not to do it. But if you're going to do it, hey, I told you, so don't. So now you'll know, rather than saying, oh, Heather, why didn't you tell me XYZ could happen? No, we'll tell you now. And then you can make that choice. So, yeah, I would say don't go rush out and get a new place.
Okay. You just mentioned to make sure you check in with your attorney about this. But really, any financial question, any financial decision, it sounds like you need to check with your attorney about that before you do it.
Oh, absolutely. Because we're in the middle of a divorce, and in something that you might do otherwise, not really an issue, everything's under a microscope, and things can be looked at in so many different ways. And that's just the reality of what it is. So be smart and communicate with your attorney, who is the advisor that you have hired to advise you and to strategize with you on this. And again, that goes to, I mean, you and your attorney should be having talks about your future and what your goals are, so that will have come up. But if they haven't, then you need to make sure they're aware, because we don't, as your attorney, we don't know everything unless you tell, and we certainly don't talk to you every day. We don't need to. You don't need to talk to us every day, but on big financial things that are coming up, you should let us know.
Yeah. Something you just mentioned. Remember, you hired us. You're paying us money for this, so it would be good, to use the services.
Well, and if you make a bad decision, it's going to be more costly for us to try to, get you out of it. And now we're litigating something that if you had asked us and or listen to what we said, we might not have to deal with that. And sometimes people just, it's divorce is challenging, and people, completely rational, intelligent people, make decisions sometimes that aren't that rational.
Yes. Whether you're going through a divorce or not, let me tell you. So let's talk about assets and hiding them or lying about these things. That's not good, right? I already know the answer to that one. But of course, I have to ask you. That's not good, right, Heather?
That's right, Julie. You are so perceptive. And you are correct. Like, don't do it. And it is... The financial affidavit has the list of assets on there and liabilities, and it is signed under oath. And, then your credibility is lost with the court. And if you're trying to inflate a bunch of things that really we can't back up, that's not a good idea. And, the most common, Julie, and it cracks me up every time, and it upsets our clients, our wives, because they're like, he's lying on this. You made me spend all this time on this financial affidavit to make sure it's right, and this is all a lie. And, I tell them all the time, I'm like, that's fine with me, because we will expose them as a liar in front of the judge, because I tend to expect them to lie. The favorite lie of all men is to put their salary, but they don't list their bonus. The bonus that they've received like every year for 20 years, well, it's not guaranteed. I mean, if any of the men are listening now, maybe they'll be like, I'll put it on. But they still think they're so smart, they're going to outsmart everybody. Like, we're not going to see it on the tax return and pay stubs and everything and attribute that money to you. But that's a very, very common one. And if I've heard it once, I've heard a million times with a man on the bonus. Well, that's not guaranteed. I mean, you've received it, for the past 10, 15 years, but this year, don't know.
Yeah, right. Wow. Okay. So let me ask you this. Are there any penalties? Let's say the man lies. What are the penalties for this, if any?
I wish there are no penalties. I wish we could charge him with perjury. Trust me, I have thought about it before.
No penalties?
Yeah, the court is going to, and the judges probably expect everybody's going to lie. I mean, I expect them to lie. I'm shocked when they tell the truth, frankly. I've never seen the judge do anything except order the money or, say, I disagree with you. I really haven't, unfortunately, which isn't to say, we prove that the money is there and our client wins because she's going to get the support. So that's really at the extent. I mean, some of the penalties, there are so many things that I would say, like, the court should make them pay more of the fees because they've basically lied and drawn out litigation rather than being straightforward. But
okay.
Now, and if it were really bad, I will tell you what now. And I have seen the judges put somebody in jail, so that I see that as a positive. That's really more not paying, but also lying about ability to pay and stuff like that. They certainly have that power, and that has most definitely happened. But with your financial affidavit, and I think that's where sometimes our clients get a little bit upset because they're like, why doesn't the other side take it as seriously? And again, I mean, they just are lazy or they think they're going to get away with not disclosing their income, eventually it all comes out. So anyway, I think the best rule is to be honest and be in integrity, particularly when you are presenting documents that the court will consider as evidence. And you're always going to be better off for doing that, because you'll know it's correct and you won't feel or be made to feel as though you're lying, maybe by the other attorney, because you're not. You're like, these expenses are what they are. And usually if somebody's going to lie and try to hide stuff, they don't care if they're, exposed as not being truthful. But I mean, the courts do care, and they may, talk to them sternly, and then they're going to have to split the money that's there and pay the alimony.
So what if the wife knows that they're hiding something? Can the court subpoena documents?
Yes, your attorney, the judge isn't going to do anything for you as far as subpoena anything. That your attorney, yes. We subpoena documents to show and to prove, the assets. And, so a lot of times we subpoena the pay stubs and bank accounts so that, we can clearly see the money coming in.
Now, when we think about money going out, and I believe this is something that you mentioned in a previous show, don't look at just 1 month. You need to look at a lot of months. So what would be typical for, as far as the expenses are concerned? How long do you look at?
I think 6 months can be a good reflection. But I think that at least gets a good starting point, and you can get, a sense, it used to be, before things became so much, more energy efficient, but typically, hey, your electric bill is going to be higher the months where you're running the AC more or than others. So just take an average, and 6 months is a great thing, but to look at, that can seem like a lot. So maybe 3 months, there are going to be some, expenses that really don't fluctuate. And then many times, with expenses, so income can fluctuate. Some people are in seasonal businesses. And so if you just look at, say March and April of a car salesperson's pay stub, that may not look as great as, August, September, or the fourth quarter. Now, I'm making that up because I do not know when the highs and lows, except I do know it tends to be pretty high towards the fourth quarter. But, that's an example of a job that's certainly going to fluctuate, and they know when the trends are. And same with a lot of different sales and management jobs. And then some jobs, they are going to get bonused, and their big bonus comes in the first quarter of the year for the year before. So, every industries and different pay certainly fluctuate and differentiate. So you're going to want to understand how that is for sure on, what those expenses or income may be, those fluctuations. That may require you to really look at 12 months. Now, we as the attorneys are going to really analyze the income of your spouse as well as you, because if you have income, we need to know, is it fluctuating? Where is it? So that, say a teacher who elects just to be paid during the school year versus all year round. We just need to know, how you have that, so that, because a financial affidavit is a snapshot of a 1 month. So it's, going to be an average. So we're going to look at a lot of things like that. And like summer camp for kids, like sometimes that summer care is really expensive. You don't have it all year round. So you kind of are like, well, don't forget that. So there's a lot of those that can be an example.
Random thought. Heather, all the business. Like you know everything. You know what I mean? Like it's just, everything about that particular client, because really you need to know in order to support them in the way that they need to be supported. So, yeah.
Absolutely. We do.
Yeah.
We do.
So Do the courts take into account, let's say, if the wife has a medical condition, disability, or if they're close to retiring, do they take all of that into account?
Absolutely. It does, because, part of the law is that, is income going to be imputed to you if you have never worked, if you can't work? So many things come into play. If you're close to retirement, well, are there retirement assets? So we look at that for income for both parties, or for Social Security. And, that's when the judge isn't following what your financial advisor may tell you, which is take Social Security late. They may say, hey, you can take it now. You got to take it. You have to supplement your income. If you're disabled, they're going to look at, well, are you disabled and receiving Social Security disability? Okay. That's going to meet some of your financial needs. If you have always been a stay-at-home mom and don't have an education or no work history outside the home, the law is going to require them to look at, well, do they impute income to you? So yeah, all of that is relevant. And sometimes, many times, experts are hired on that issue alone, which is to determine if you could work. Not that actually you would get hired, but if there are jobs that you could do.
Yes, a lot to take into consideration. Wow. You're listening to Women Winning Divorce with Heather Quick, owner and attorney for Florida Women's Law Group. Heather, negotiating alimony, something I thought about. One of the examples that you used in the first show about alimony, if you guys want to listen to that, I encourage you to do so. You can go to womenwinningdivorce.com. One of the examples that you use is, let's say the person is making $5,000 a month. You think I can get $4,000 of that? Maybe? No, probably not. Okay.
Probably not. And I wish if I could, I'd get it for you, and let him, have nothing. But the reality is, it's probably not going to work out that way. It's not going to, unfortunately, be, 80% of what he makes, or is that 90? But regardless, definitely my goal. But I always tell people that that's not going to happen.
Yeah. So you got to be realistic, right? Set expectations.
It's difficult. I'm not, hey, I understand. And I do. I really understand where our clients are coming from. And that's why, we've got to, let them know, hey, this is where realistically we're going to end up. So it's part of, again, preparing yourself, knowing and not being blindsided.
So when is alimony negotiated? Is that where mediation comes in?
Yes, certainly when we're at mediation, which, I think we will be talking about in a future episode. Mediation is required. So when you're there, everything's on the table to be negotiated. And yes, at that time, alimony because the court, many people think, well, I'm just going to tell the judge this, or the judge is going to hear evidence, from the testimony and documents, and they are going to make a decision based on the information they have and the evidence. There's not really a lot of creativity, just because the courts don't have the time, or necessarily that's not the purpose when you're at a trial or hearing. That the purpose is to make a decision on the facts based on the law. So yes, during mediation, alimony can be negotiated.
So this also means that this is a time when we just gave that example, you're not going to get 80% of it. So you need to be flexible, and you need to understand what's going to happen.
Yes. And the best, the best thing we can do for our clients and with our clients is to, using our experience and knowing what we know about the case and the financials. All right. This is, knowing that spot of the middle to compromise, because, when you go to mediation, you're not getting your best day in court. Now, hey, if we go to court, maybe, we do great and we get more than we thought, more than maybe we would have settled for. but at a, that's a little bit of risk, or, you get less than you expected. So that's where you want to have an idea going into mediation of a range of, hey, this is the lowest I'll accept. And this is kind of where we're going to start for negotiation purposes. We will advise our clients, sometimes it's just like, that's just a bad deal and we're not doing it. And we have to tell our clients, no, you're going to do better in front of a judge. He is not willing to negotiate. He's being greedy. I feel like anyone at mediation that's just like being really greedy. And I use that word greedy because that's the way I think it is on, I want more for me, I'm not going to pay. You're not going to do well in front of the court because you have unrealistic expectations as far as what the law is and, your exposure, particularly for men paying alimony. And that is, a frequent case we go to trial on because men, don't want to pay it. And so therefore they're like, I'm not paying it. And it's like, you're going to go to court where like the case may very well call for permanent alimony. In mediation, maybe there's room for us to negotiate on that. And maybe we would settle for less than permanent and we'd settle for something else with some other, concessions and things like that. Or, they want it non-modifiable, meaning you can't change it even if the needs go up or his income goes up. Those are things that could be negotiated, but that's not going to happen with the court. They're not going to say that, that you can't modify it. So yeah, I know I probably just brought up a lot of, different situations, all within like one sentence, but I guess the main thing to take out of this is, yeah, there are ways to be creative during mediation. And our goal is like that, women winning divorce. It's like, we got to figure out what you want, because if we understand your goals as our client, that's how we win. We get your goals. It's not necessarily about making him lose, because that, that doesn't feel great. It's more about making you win. Like, hey, what did you want? What are your main goals? And like this is a really good example, Julie. And I know I've said it before because this is something I say often. Like, okay, we're going through this divorce, but you are in love with someone else. Okay, like true love, and you're marrying that person. Okay, well, let's not waste like months and years, money to get you permanent alimony. Permanent alimony is going to go away when you get married. So why don't you come clean to your attorney? Because that's just foolish on your part to not share that with us. I don't care. I'm not going to judge you. Our attorneys are not going to judge you. But like, okay, then maybe we need to move around, negotiate on that, because although you may be eligible for that, you have told me this is your plan. So maybe winning for you looks different than for another client it might be permanent alimony.
Okay. So, when I say something like, okay, like that, I have questions. Okay. So something you almost said, you said years. Is this a process that can take years?
It can. It can.
My goodness.
It's that I certainly have been in cases that have lasted multiple years. And usually there's a lot of different circumstances and things that intervene. But yes, and that is also, not, I don't think in anyone's best interest to be involved in litigation in this process for so long. It makes it very difficult for you to go on with your life. That being said, we only control part of the process, and not even half the process, because the attorneys, there's the other attorney on the other side, and then there's the judges that have a lot of control. And if they won't schedule things, and that has happened, and of course, like, we can reflect on what happened with COVID and then the delay that caused. And then, sometimes towards the end of the year, the judges don't set anything, and people just have to wait, and judges don't make a decision. People just have to wait. And as your attorney, it's very frustrating, because our job is to help you and move it forward. And sometimes there are parts of the system that just like a, constraint, and we are unable to change that for the clients. But so, and, arguing about things and having a lot of litigation, coupled with calendaring, can cause things to go on for years.
That puts your life on hold. That just, it's almost,
it does.
It stops everything.
It does. And it's not, it's certainly nothing I would wish for anybody at all. Sometimes, like, we need more time to get discovery, and somebody, they want it over. It's like, listen, we've got to have the information, financial information necessary to make the best decisions for you. But the only ones that benefit over longer litigation, I guess, are the attorneys, if they're getting paid. Like, otherwise, it just doesn't. It's not healthy for the family. It's very disruptive. And I think it's really important to try and move cases along as quickly as we can, which isn't that quick in the legal system, but it's important for people to move on with their life, for sure.
Another thing that you mentioned, which I thought was interesting, and it feels like this is possibly the first question that you may ask a potential client. What do you want? Is that one of the first questions you ask them? What do you want? What are you looking for? What's your end game?
We do. And we continue to ask that because, so many people might not have ever thought about it. And they don't even know. Silly. I mean, and I think they do. Like, okay, it's like, yeah, I want to be financially secure. I want a place of my own. I want the kids to have this or that. I want to know I'll be okay in retirement. They may not have very, very specifics, but we start on a larger scale, and it is important. And like I said, and sometimes, Julie, they haven't ever really thought about it. And so it evolves, but it is important, because if you don't even think about it, then you haven't thought about it. And certainly then you'll think about it at some point. You'll be like, why did I do what I did? Because nobody actually tried to help me consider my future. And then you may have ideas, but if you're not able to communicate that, or there's not an opportunity to communicate that with your attorney, then you're also not going to be where you want to be at the end of this. So yeah, it's very important to, as you begin this process and all during it, look ahead at your future. And that's healthy, because, as you're going through the divorce, like we said, not getting over it, we're getting through it. If hey, there's this end of the tunnel and that light is where I'm going, and that makes this worth it, then that mentally is just so much better and healthier.
Oh my. So what if a spouse was having an affair? Does that affect alimony?
No, not really.
What?
I can't see an instance, and I'll tell you, especially, like, let's think about it. The wife's having an affair, but she didn't work, so the husband's now going to have to pay her alimony anyway. Whew, he is not going to be happy, I can tell you. Those cases are ugly, because you can imagine the emotion in that, but no, the law is the law. And, if you're living with somebody else, that's a whole nother story. That will absolutely affect alimony, and you won't get alimony if you're going to, if you're living with another man in a romantic relationship. So, but the affair in and of itself does not keep you from receiving alimony. Okay.
What if he was having an affair? It's had no effect, period.
No effect. If you want to, I don't think I've given you this example. So, and this is, if you think about, like, The Godfather, there's movies, and they had the mistress set up and clearly costing, thousands and thousands of dollars. Okay. That's relevant, because that's a lot of money out the door on an extramarital relationship. You see receipts for flowers and some gifts and maybe a trip. That's relevant, but, in the grand scheme of things, if it's not a bunch of money spent, it's just not going to make as big of an impact. So that's where it is relevant on money spent on an extramarital relationship, because you've taken marital money and gotten and spent it on someone else. So you owe me that back, or half of it back, I guess. Half of it's mine. Half of it's yours. You look confused.
Oh, Heather, I am so confused right now.
I'm sorry.
Because, again, I can't be the only one, because I was thinking that would have some type of bearing on how much I could get because of the distress that it caused me.
I mean, I like it. I like where you're going. And if I could make a case for it, I would. But currently in the law, there's enough emotional distress from being married. So I don't know that you can add that to it. That's just my attempt at some humor. Yes, it should be, but it is not, because we are a no-fault state.
Oh my. Okay. All right, Heather, any parting words?
I guess the only thing is alimony is we've tipped the iceberg. I apologize if I've confused you to pieces. So that means there's more to know. If that is something that is, going to be an issue in your divorce, that's why you need advice, because everything we talked about today, Julie, is very general. And so, it's so different for every case that that's why it's so important to talk to your attorney and really understand, hey, how does alimony play into my divorce? Because it may not be anything like how it played out in your best friend's divorce.
All righty. Heather, it was great to see you again.
Thank you. Great to see you, Julie.
Thank you for listening to Women Winning Divorce. We hope you found information to help you navigate your divorce. If you like our show, please take the time to subscribe and provide a 5-star review. If you need more information, please visit our website at womenwinningdivorce.com, where you will find previous episodes and other helpful content. Join us next week as we continue our journey of women winning divorce.
Join us for the RV1 Jacksonville grand opening and get everyday low prices on the top RV brands. RV1 offers the best RV selection in Florida with 8 stores to choose from and the top brands in Jacksonville, including Jayco, Forest River, Thor, Braxton Creek, Airstream, and more. From towable trailers to motorized RVs, we have it all. Visit us to see how you could win a 2022 Class C Geneva motorhome. You won't want to miss out on these grand opening deals. Find us at RV1.com or off I-295 on Merrill Road.